All right, it is live right now.
Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. I am Dr. Sarina Abdullah from School of the Arts. I'm the current Deputy Dean of Research, Industry, Community Engagement for School of the Arts. Thank you for being with us today. This is the ICAP session for Fine Arts Department, and we have our ICAP panel here, Mr. Richard Koh from Richard Koh Fine Arts, in which he will be joined or will be joining him will be is Miss Rady, Janet Rady, a curator and also gallery director who specializes in contemporary art from the Middle East. Okay, what is ICAP? ICAP stands for Industry Community Advisor Panel. So in which School of the Arts, Fine Arts Department had appointed Mr. Richard Koh to be our panel for this session. Okay, but we are very happy to have Miss Janet Rady as part of our panelists today, so that we can have more conversations in this very, very interesting title of the session is titled as Internationalization of Contemporary Art, Stories and Reflections on the Globalized Art World. And I'm very happy also to introduce our moderator for today's session, which is Fine Arts Department Industrial Fellow, Dr. Elham Shafaei, who is going to introduce or give more proper introduction to both Mr. Richard Koh and also Ms. Janet Rady. Okay, so without further ado, okay, I pass this session to Dr. Elham Shafaei.
Hello, thank you, Dr. Sarina, and hello, everyone. And good evening, good morning, it depends on where you are. So, okay, so welcome to ICAP Webinar 2021, organized by the School of Arts, University Science Malaysia. My name is Dr. Elham Shafaei. I'm the Industrial Fellow at the School of Arts USM, and I will be the moderator for this webinar. We are honored to have Ms. Janet Rady and Mr. Richard Koh as panelists today. They will speak about the internationalization of contemporary art, stories and reflections on the globalized art world. Each panelist will speak for about 15 minutes, and after that, we will have Q&A session at the end of the presentation for about 30 minutes. Our first speaker is Janet Rady, a gallery director, a curator, who is based between London and the United Arab Emirates. She is a specialist in contemporary art from the Middle East, with over 30 years experience of the international art market, including leading auction houses and major commercial galleries. Janet holds a master's degree in Islamic art history from the University of Melbourne and a BA from the School of Oriental and African Studies, University of London. In 2007, founded her gallery, Janet Rady Fine Art. The online gallery works with a wide range of emerging and established artists, including a number of contemporary Arab and Iranian artists. Janet is a member of the Arab-British Chamber of Commerce and sits on the Advisory Council of Caravan Arts. She is also on the Council of the Iran Society and a nominator for the Jamil Prize. Janet is a specialist at Chiswick Auction and runs their modern and contemporary Middle Eastern and North African sales. She regularly writes articles on the Middle Eastern art market and has edited the book 33 Artists, 33 Islands, A Kingdom of Art, a comprehensive survey of the artists of Bahrain and transcending conflict, the private collections of the former U.S. ambassador to the UAE, Mr. John Rakolta and Mrs. Terry Rakolta. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Ms. Janet Rady, to share her experience with us for the ICAP Webinar Series 2021. Please, Janet.
Thank you, Elham, for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for inviting me to speak on this panel today. I'm just going to give a short introduction to the international art market. Obviously, the international art market is very broad. There's no one market. There are several different markets within that market, but when I refer to the international art market, I'm usually referring to the market for contemporary art in the UK, in the US, and also now in Asia. So I'm going to start my little PowerPoint presentation, and then it will be available after the session if anybody would like it. Yeah. Okay, so here we go with the title, Internationalization of Contemporary Art, Stories and Reflections on the Globalized Art World. And I think that's what we really have to reflect on, is that it truly is globalized now, not least because of the increase in digital technology. And obviously COVID has had an effect on the world, but prior to that, the market was growing physically as well. Just to reiterate what we mean by the art world, I'm only talking about the commercial art world. I'm not talking about the museum world, the non-commercial world, the private collections, if you like. This is purely about where the transactions happen. And obviously the most important one is the commercial art galleries, which have been growing and growing and growing in the last few years. We've seen recently the rise of the blue chip galleries such as Hauser and Wirth, Gagosian, obviously, David Zwerner, and White Cube. Those are the ones that spring to mind. There are others, Perotin, there are others who are perhaps in the US, not in the UK. And these galleries are becoming incredibly powerful players in the market. They have the ability and the finances to take on a lot of artists. They look for artists who perhaps are mid-career. Another gallery has taken them up to the level that they're at, but that younger gallery can't perhaps then fund the activities of the artists. So that's when the larger galleries come on board, and they take the younger artists from these other galleries. The art fairs, obviously that's where the galleries participate. They have the opportunity to show their best artworks. Quite often the artworks now being taken to fairs by the big galleries are pre-sold, so it's really a showcasing for the gallery. They get the opportunity to meet new collectors and engage with the audience there through the art fairs. There's now, I think, over 365 art fairs, so more than one art fair per day. I'm not talking about the effect of COVID because some of them won't be coming back, but the main ones such as Art Basel, Armory, Frieze, they will all still exist after the lockdown opens. Biennials, I've put this in here as part of the commercial art world because it really is under another name. It's a fair in all other respects. It's just that there's no price tag on the works of art. But I think everybody is aware these days that if somebody wants to buy a work of art that's being showcased in a biennial, then it's available for sale. And of course, the biennials, they're increasing enormously as well. Auction houses are the prime place for selling secondary market works. In other words, works that have already left the artist studios and are now being acquired for the second time, and they are proliferating, as we all know. The major players, Christie's, Sotheby's, Phillips, and in the UK, Bonhams. Obviously, there are other houses in Asia and the US. And then last but not least is the growth of the online platforms. And they've grown exponentially in the last year or so, partly as the effect of COVID has taken over from the physical platforms, but then the technology was developing anyway. I mean, 2 years ago, nobody even thought about having this presentation online. So that's one indication of how online platforms have grown. Technology is improving. The galleries are using digital means to put the message across. They're becoming more sophisticated. OVRs, that's online viewing rooms. Both galleries and art fairs are using those, and of course social media, the most prevalent of which for the art world is Instagram, followed perhaps by Facebook and Twitter. So here we have just a quick overview. Every year Art Basel commissions Claire McAndrew to do a report on the art market. Obviously it's not completely comprehensive, but it does give a very good indication of what's happening in the art market overall. So this just shows the share of the global art market. As you can see, it's still in 2020, it's still 42% US based, 20% Greater China, 20% UK, and others is the rest of the world. I always say that the UK figures are slightly skewed because they really concentrate on the auctions whereby the works of art, they may be physically brought to the UK for the auction. You think of the major sales at Christie's and Sotheby's where they're selling Basquiat, Banksy, Damien Hirst, the really top artists, but the chances are that those artworks will actually then be leaving the UK, so they don't stay there because there are very, very few collectors in the UK. Most of the collector base is in the US and in Asia. But that figure is there nevertheless. So the effect of COVID, I've talked a little bit about this. I mean, everybody knows what's been happening with COVID. Of course, it has affected the market, but even so, you look at the figures, it shrank it by 22% in 2020, but it's still 50 billion. 50 billion is a huge number. And it will start to grow again. And I think, in fact, as the comments here say, as the restrictions ease, you can see galleries for real at an art fair now. Art Basel in Basel will be happening in September. It will be happening in Miami in December. The galleries are all open, so you can go to the spaces, but you can still speak to the gallerists over Zoom. You can browse the online events. You can see works that would have been shown at an art fair, but that they're being presented either on an online viewing room or by a talks program, which the galleries are very good now, the podcasts that they're all doing. And then the auctions, we've all seen how those have developed as well, that you get the virtual auctions where you have a physical auctioneer. I think the best one that everybody knows is Oliver Barker, who will be selling an auction globally. So he will be on the rostrum for maybe 4, 5, 6 hours. He has to cover all the time zones. So like today, it's very early in the morning. And for you, it's in the afternoon. Oliver will be on the rostrum to make sure that he's able to engage with the collectors in New York, London, and Asia. And there, I'm not going to go into cryptocurrencies and NFTs because that's a completely different part of the art world, I feel. We're all watching to see what's happening, but it's most definitely there. So, and as I was saying, it's all coming back again. The market was starting to become more fragmented anyway beforehand, but I think COVID has probably driven this fragmentation enormously. So as I say here, you've got, it says it's all a bit confusing. Art fairs have become gallery hubs. So the Frieze Art Fair is opening a physical space in Cork Street in London. Gallery hubs host art fairs. Well, this is Cromwell Place, which is a new development in London, whereby galleries can become members, and then they can use one of the galleries for their exhibitions for a 2-week period each year. They have to pay for it, and when they're not using it, then it's used for other events such as art fairs or graduation shows. Gallery hub, so auction houses host galleries. Here we have 154, which is the African Art Fair. Started off in London, and then in New York, and then in Marrakesh. But during the lockdown, it couldn't have any physical presence, so it started to show, the galleries participating started to show their works via Christie's website, and that's still happening now. And indeed, other auction houses are starting to host art fairs as well. There's a new art fair in Paris of Middle Eastern art that was hosted by one of the auction houses there. Galleries run magazines, whether that's a physical print magazine or an online magazine, and they probably all have a podcast, as I said. So it's really becoming blurred and fragmented. So obviously, what does an artist do to get their work out into this very, very confusing world? The most important things is to get the practical steps right. In other words, do your preparation very, very carefully of your work, of yourself. Make sure that everything is fully documented, that you have your CV in place, ideally that you have a website set up so people can see the works there, and that you're also using social media to full effect. That means posting interesting stories about yourself and your work, but posting every day to start getting the followers there, and following people that you think will be interested in your work, but don't stalk them is the I think the most important message, because it doesn't do you any favors if you stalk people. Promoting your work, some things are free, others you have to pay for. Obviously, if you're going to set up a website, it's not expensive, but you do have to pay for it. You will have to get your business cards printed, you have to pay for that. But the one thing that you shouldn't do is you will find sooner or later that you'll be approached by galleries or even biennials who say that they absolutely love your work. They've been following you and they would love for you to be part of their exhibition. And it's only a small fee of, and then they'll quote a price of thousands of whatever the currency is, or, well, yeah, for either being part of their exhibition or being part of their publication or whatever. So stay away from that, because their motives are very different. They're not there to promote you, they're there to make money for themselves. So it's normally not a good idea if you're asked to pay for something. But just sometimes, I mean, there may be a small application fee for a prize, for instance, or the Royal Academy in London, they have a very prestigious summer exhibition where you do have to pay. So just do your research and make sure that you're applying for a genuine opportunity. Applying for gallery representation, I'm going to go through a list of things at the moment, and then finally, useful websites, books, and advice for artists. I've put together a whole list which is available afterwards, so I'm not going to go through that, but the important thing is just to research it all. So how do you apply for gallery representation? As I keep saying, do your research. Now, the way that I've written this is for actually, if you're in the same country as the gallery that you're wanting to be represented by. Clearly, if you're in Malaysia and you want to be represented by a gallery in the UK or in New York, it's not going to be possible for you to go there, but it's still the same process as to how you reach out to that gallery. So visit the gallery website, do some basic research reconciliation to see if your art would be a fit. This is really important. There's no point in approaching a gallery who only shows I don't know, video art if you're a painter, or vice versa. So but then you don't want to be identical to the artists who are already on the gallery roster. So just use your common sense to see whether or not you think you'll be a good fit. Check gallery's website, see what types of art and artists are featured, and then yeah, you just watch them follow them on social media, on Instagram. If they have podcasts, listen to the podcast as well. Call for an appointment. Well, clearly you can't do that if you're not in the same country physically, but you can perhaps do that by phone or exceptionally by Zoom. It's just about making that initial contact with them. if you're fortunate enough to be able to attend an international art fair, then obviously you will have the opportunity to meet the gallerists there. But bear in mind that if you are at an art fair, the last thing that the gallery wants to do is have a 2-hour conversation with an artist about how wonderful that artist's work is. So leave it, make it brief, introduce yourself, leave your card, get the card of the gallerist, and then follow up afterwards. So say, ask about their application procedure and who you should speak with and when would be a convenient time. So they may well tell you that they don't take artists' works directly from the artists, which can be a problem, because then you're left with having to find somebody else to propose your work to them, either somebody else in the art world, or perhaps your tutor, or who else. You can employ an agent, but that will cost money. So this is the difficult bit. It's making that initial entry into the gallery. Don't show photos on your phone. I've had this happen to me when an artist comes to me at an art fair and says, "Oh, Janet, I would love for you to see my work," and they stand there trying to find the photos. They do perhaps find them, and they scroll through them. You don't get the full details of what the work is. You don't get an indication of the size or the medium or anything, and it can be incredibly annoying. As I say, it's unprofessional, and it tells me that the artists are not taking me or my time seriously. And even if your work is amazing, then you've already started on a bad footing with the gallerist. I think this is again for physical meetings, flash drives and discs. They're not used so much today anyway, but I suppose the same thing would count. Don't sort of send a WeTransfer file with all your images with no file names on them to whomever at the gallery, because they're not going to look at it. You have to have that first introduction, and then perhaps put together a PDF with all the details, with your CV, with your bio, any exhibitions that you have already attended before, and just some nice images. And then, as this is obvious, advertise your brand. You are the brand. You can use free sites. I don't necessarily agree with them, because I don't think the quality is controlled. So be careful if you're putting your works onto, I mean, Saatchi Art is a famous site in the UK. Everybody thinks that it's part of Saatchi Gallery, but it's actually a completely separate entity. So again, choose very carefully if you're putting your work on an online site. Quality counts, obviously. Just make sure that your photos are the best that they can be, and consider having professional photos taken of your artwork. That I can't stress how important that is. And just getting the details correct, making sure that your name is spelt the same way, because quite often in the Middle East, if you're using a transliteration of your name, it can be spelt in different ways. It's so annoying if an artist will spell their name in different ways, because you don't know how to refer to them. So it's the tiny little details that make all the difference. And then, as I said before, make your statement. Your biography should include your education, exhibitions and awards, and have an artist statement. It's very important. Some artists say, "Oh, but the audience should make up their mind about my work." Well, you must have had a reason for making it, whether it's just because that's how you are feeling that day, or whether you're inspired by some event or have a political motivation. But most artists do have a reason, so say it, because it's interesting. The galleries, the collectors, they want to know what story goes on behind your work. I haven't used Artibollocks, but it sounds like quite a fun site. So maybe take a look at that to see what it says. So and that's really it. It's short and sweet. I'm afraid I could go into a lot more detail, but as you see, there are lots and lots and lots of resources. I've just put the links here, a couple of pages of resources, which will tell you much more about how to get your work noticed by the international art world. You will get rejected hundreds of times, possibly. Don't let that stop you from applying. But maybe if you are being rejected the whole time, have a think why is it? The galleries won't tell you. Sometimes they won't even answer you as to why you're not suitable for the gallery, but have a think. Is it because you're approaching it the wrong way? It's the wrong gallery, it's the wrong time. You haven't got a big enough body of work. Just reflect. And then, you know, maybe ask a colleague, a fellow artist, to see if they can give any advice as well. And that's it. And there's my website at the bottom. That's not me. So thank you, everybody. I hope that was helpful.
Thank you very much, Janet.
Sharing.
Great.
Stop sharing.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
It was very useful, and thank you very much. And now I would like to invite Richard Koh to speak. But before that, I would like to just briefly share his bio. Mr. Richard Koh is a founder of Richard Koh Fine Arts and Richard Koh Projects Contemporary Art Gallery based in Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and Bangkok, representing established and emerging Southeast Asian artists. He is regarded as a pioneer for introducing contemporary Southeast Asian art to the region. He now actively mounts exhibitions and presentations locally and abroad, and he's advised various leading institutions and private collections. I would like to welcome Mr. Richard Koh for his talk. Please, Richard.
Hi, thank you, Elham. Now, what can I say that you know, everything Janet has already put it in such a good presentation. But I will maybe say something about the local context or the regional context in terms of you know, for artists or final year students from the school who wants to go regional or even out of Malaysia. I think one of the most important thing to understand about the market, you know, because people get the wrong perception of the market. They think the market is super commercial. It is like a supermarket. It's like, you know, online. You know, there is always something for everybody. But I think in general, artists need to understand where do they fit in, you know, until you know where you fit in, then you will understand how to approach the galleries, what sort of galleries, and you know, whether you are an artist who's basically well, what most, some of them are not most, but some people, some artists who call themselves non-commercial artists, you know, which always amazes me because, you know, they are non-commercial, but they want to show in a gallery, and the gallery is commercial. So there's always this conflict. What is it that you want, you know? So I think most important is to really understand what your practice is all about. You know, what is it that you want as a practicing artist, you know? And then find your little sweet spot. You know, there are many different galleries all over the world. They all have their part to play, and they're all important in many ways. So, you know, like what Janet has said, you know, artists will probably encounter lots of rejections. I think most of the rejections come from the fact that they don't understand where they fit in. They are approaching the wrong type of galleries, or they are approaching the wrong type of institutions, or trying to get into, you know, biennales and all that, which technically they are not that sort of artists. It takes a certain kind of artist to be able to do shows in institutions or biennales and all that. But that doesn't mean they are not commercial. I mean, we all know all the biennales and triennales are the most commercial, no price tag shows. You know, anything and everything can be bought. So there is a, you know, a skewed understanding of what the commercial world is. So coming back to artists from this part of the world or from Southeast Asia, because it is still a very young market, a young development. I think the understanding of what that so-called global market is all about, they need to have a better understanding of what it is. And once you at least understand some part of it and know where you fit in, then half the battle is won. You know how to maneuver and how to go about your everyday art and practices. I think for me that's the most important thing coming from this part of the world. And because it is new, it is small, it is young, and compounded with the fact that Southeast Asia has so many different languages which you need to maneuver. Unlike in the Middle East, everybody speaks Arabic or French. In Europe, everybody speaks French or English. In the States, everybody speaks English. And China and Taiwan and all, they're all Mandarin speaking. So unlike in Southeast Asia, you have so many different languages, and the visual language is so different. So it is more difficult in a way to maneuver or to even go out of your comfort zone from that point of view. Yeah, so basically it's quite a general thing. And as the world becomes more and more connected and more globalized, and there is better opportunities for everyone to get some form of visual exposure. But now that we are in this pandemic situation and with all these art fairs having to, I wouldn't say hold back, but maybe scale down and become more localized in that sense, because there's no traveling involved. So unless you are very familiar, again, it comes back to knowing what it is that you want, right? Unless you're very familiar with that gallery, you're not going to buy something expensive online, through the gallery, unless you're already dealing with them. So at the moment, from my observation, the fairs that's happening and the shows that are happening everywhere else where they are allowed to happen are all still quite localized. It's gone a little bit local in that sense. And hopefully when this pandemic is over, when people are allowed to travel again, we might have a realignment of what is international, what is global, what is an international collection as to just, a Western collection or just an Asian collection. Are collectors going to cross properly now instead of buying just brands, or are they going to go inwards and look at the region? So there are lots of factors at play at the moment. There's a lot of patriotic nationalism kind of feeling going on with all these lockdowns. So, and of course, there's also the politics involved. So at the end of the day, it'll be interesting to see where this is going. I mean, we can't really look at it now and say, hey, this is what's happening, because the market is very top heavy at the moment. There's nothing really at the middle or the bottom. It's all brand. It's all about brand. Everyone is trying to buy a blue chip. But what is a blue chip? Blue chip today might be worthless tomorrow. So again, it comes back to what is the market all about? And again, for artists, who are trying to get into that whole ecosystem, it comes back to the same basic principle. You need to understand what you're all about and what is your direction and where do you want to get to at the end of the day. And then you chart a course and strategize and get on with it. It's almost like a collector. What do you want to collect? When you say global, an international collection, how can you actually collect international? Because it's so big. You can't possibly buy all the blue chip from everywhere, if there's such a thing as blue chip from everywhere, right? Because everything is very different. And again, there's also price point taxation factors when it comes to all these blue chip things, blue chip work or very high price art. In Southeast Asia, there's no tax benefit or a tax write-off or whatever when it comes to buying very expensive works. Whereas in America, in the West, you actually have them. You can even use it to offset your, what do you call it? Death taxes, is it? Or estate tax, or foundation tax or whatever. There are all sorts of instruments for you to use. We don't have it here. So again, it is a different form of it's a different market altogether. Sometimes that particular market, when you have instruments like that in place, it's not really about the art. It is more about the taxation, it's not about the money. So again, like I said, there's something for everybody because it is so big. The so-called market is so big, and I think one just have to find one's own little sweet spot, and get on with it and see where it goes from there. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? And what is trendy now, might be out of fashion tomorrow. So it is so important, I think, that whether you're a gallerist or an artist or a collector or even an institution or a private museum, to really understand the rationale and the reason for doing this. I think it is extremely important to be totally honest about it, because for so long, it has gone kind of haywire, anyone can do a mega show as long as somebody is willing to foot the bill. But, at the end of the day, what has it got to do with the art? It's all sensationalized, thanks to Saatchi, but, he was ahead of his time. But, as we go into what I call the real 21st century, going into it with NFT and all that, it is going to be a very different ball game. So we shall see what happens in the next 12 to 18 months, when we get to travel again and things start restart again, and see where it goes. So basically what I'm trying to say is, I think for the young artists or the regional artists or even galleries or collectors, this is the best time to actually reflect on and to really understand what is it and why is it that you're doing this, and I think that's pretty, for me, that's the most important thing at this point. Well, basically that's it.
Thank you very much, Richard, and thanks for sharing your thought with us, and which is going to be useful for the students, because they are young artists and they are going to be, just in that region, especially in Malaysia or in Southeast Asia. So what you share, because you know better what's happening in that region. So just, it is going to be very helpful for the students. So now I would like to open the sessions for Q&A, and just for sure, maybe so many of the audiences, they have questions from both of you, and we are going to be happy to hear and see here the question. So please don't hesitate to ask, and feel free to ask whatever comes to your mind and related to the topic. But while we are waiting for the questions, so we just this is just came in my mind, and I'm going to ask you, Richard. Is about the pandemic situation. Just how it just effect on Malaysian artists or in Southeast Asian artists, regarding to be like just to drive them to be or to show, internationally. So that such a thing happened, because whenever, just during the lockdown, or, just when everything is become more globalized during this pandemic, I believe, just because it became like, it feels like smaller, everything, just the connection is easier because of, just the internet connections, and, just everyone sit at home and, just start doing their things, curating their exhibition, showing their exhibition, even like internet art also, just or digital version of producing art. It became like, just did you see effects after this in Malaysian artists, or some sort of drive they want to show internationally, or such a thing?
Well, for Malaysia, what I've noticed is there are some artists who are still very busy working, regardless of whether they have a show or not. They are still working, producing, but in general, nothing much is happening from what I've observed with a lot of the artists. They are just staying at home, or they are trying to do something else maybe, but or the other extreme is, they're just pushing their works on the social media, trying to sell them. So nothing really constructive in that sense. I don't see anyone doing something different. It's the standard video which they will send to everyone to try and sell a work. And initially, at the last year, initially, there were lots of local support in that sense with this format. But I think people are getting a little bit tired. We are into our second year of this pandemic, and there's fatigue setting in from all these social media selling, or WhatsApp selling kind of thing, because it's not so much. I think at this point, if you're an artist and you're trying to sell a work, it can't just be a work. There must be a reason for the work, and the collector who's buying it, it would not, at this stage, it would not be just to support the artist. There must be a reason to support the artist. I think everyone is questioning this from what I gather. So I think if the artists have not moved on and just producing just to sell, like again I said, it's very important to know what sort of artist you are, and where you're heading and where you want to head, and I think that's the only way to see this whole period through. Personally, I have not seen anything groundbreaking at the moment from here, or at least from this part of the world. There are many artists who are still working very hard and still doing it. It's almost like practice makes perfect, kind of attitude. And I think, yeah, again, it will show, at the end of the day when this is all over. But there's really nothing groundbreaking happening at the moment. Maybe again it's the fatigue, and everyone's languishing. It's one after another. But don't get me wrong, there are still lots of support locally. There are still collectors who are trying to support. But like I said, it's no longer about the buying. It is supporting with a reason, with a correct reason.
Okay, thank you very much. But I always this is all my questions. So just still, just wondering, is there any drive to, just not just with the pandemic, maybe before pandemic, because you are one of the pioneer, just galleries and you well represented, Southeast Asian in internationally, just different places. And so just, about this, just I would like to know this for my personal, just curiousness. So, just there is any drive for Malaysian artists to be presented internationally, or they just produce works, just for the reason, just there are artists and then they have the drive to produce art, and so just to sell to their own collectors, or just within a region. So just I just want to know about this.
I think there is a lot of artists here who are really dying to go out, to show out. Pre-pandemic, there was still some possibilities because of the art fairs. They could join an art fair with a gallery or something like that. But now we Malaysians can't leave. We can't travel with no proper reason. So we've been stuck here for almost 2 years. So, we can't do any fairs. We can't go out to meet the clients or even work with our colleagues in other countries. But again, it is there is a real hunger to go out, but whether they actually are approaching it the correct way, like what Janet has mentioned, it is so important to approach it in the right way. Again, there are so many different avenues out there. You can work with another gallery, but how do you approach this gallery? Because, foreign galleries, they work very differently from local galleries. So even the body language is very different. Art fairs are difficult at this point. But like I said, everybody wants to go. Everybody wants to try. Again, like what Janet has said, if you've been rejected many times, you must start questioning yourself. Why is this happening? So something must be not very right somewhere, right? So it cannot be that everyone is rejecting you, for some other reasons. There must be something. Maybe it could be the way you're approaching the galleries. It could be the visual language of the work that does not resonate with the galleries, or there is really no market for that kind of work, and showing overseas is a very expensive exercise. So when the price point doesn't balance up with the cost, it is impossible. It can only be done maybe via an art fair where the gallery has some very high price works to subsidize a non-profit kind of work that they bring, just to promote the artist. Yeah, so again, everybody wants to do something outside, but it's the approach. I think it's the approach.
Thank you very much. Okay, here, Dr. Sarana asked a question, so I would like you to answer this question. She asked, you all think that there will be a more liberal way of selling art, as the pandemic has pushed many artists to be seen and sell online. Is there a return to physical gallery, or do you think that hybrid exhibition will stay post-pandemic?
So that's a very good question. Thank you. And well, I'm going to follow on from what Richard was saying, which is really the financial aspect of it. It's very expensive to have a physical gallery, certainly in London. You're looking at minimum of £100,000 a year for a small space in central London, and that's just for the rent. So I think galleries are looking to diversify their models for sure. That's one of the reasons why Cromwell Place has been popular because the costs of being a member of Cromwell Place are much smaller than having your own physical space in London. Therefore, I would say that yes, there will be a return to the physical spaces because everybody does want to see the work in person. But alongside that, then the development in the digital technologies will stay. So, for instance, I've got a friend who's actually now got 2 small spaces in London where he does exhibitions every 6 weeks in the physical spaces, but then alongside that he's doing a monthly online exhibition program because the costs are so much less. You haven't got the shipping expenses, for instance, you haven't got all the promotion that goes with it, but you can still sell the artworks if the artists are right for that online program. I think the way also that galleries are working with artists will change as well. You know, we've been talking about getting represented by a gallery. Well, I no longer, for instance, represent artists. I used to, but I found it quite problematic because I found that the artists, and I'm just an online gallery at the moment, they weren't producing enough work regularly for me to update my program. So in some cases, I'd had no new work for an artist for 5 years, and the audience loses interest in that. So, and it's now, again, I was saying earlier that the mega galleries are coming along and taking the younger artists from the younger galleries. Well, and even if you've got a contract, an agreement with that younger artist, they're never going to say, yes, I'm going to stay with you. I'm not going to go with the bigger gallery. Of course, they're going to go off to the bigger gallery. So the younger galleries are thinking, well, maybe should I not represent? Just do one-off shows, see how it works. Because again, as Richard's saying, it's about the money. You know, no gallery is going to basically just hand the artist a paycheck. It has to be a two-way thing. So there has to be the benefit for the gallery and the benefit for the artist. And right now it seems that yes, that the hybrid exhibition model is here to stay, because yeah, it's more realistic, and the galleries don't have such high overheads then in purely curating their physical shows.
Thank you very much, Janet. And we have Walid bin Ali who asked questions from Facebook. Producing local content in a contemporary setting will be helpful to promote Malaysian artists. Malaysian arts. So just okay, let me find the rest. Just keep missing. So just this is something I noticed. Abdul Walid bin Ali just mentioned on the Facebook. So just Richard, what do you think about this? Like producing local content in a contemporary setting will be helpful to promote Malaysian arts. So what do you think about this?
Well, I think it's very important to have a local content, right? Because you know, if you're a Malaysian, you obviously be doing something with the Malaysian content. You know, an artist is like a, you know, it's like a recorder. You know, you record what's going on. You know, so it has to have a local content in whatever way. But having said that, it's the visual language that's important. I think it can be a local content, but it could be a global language, you know, a global visual. The younger people nowadays, you know, people who are into NFTs and sneakers and all that, you know, the trends and all that, they are very, very connected, and they are really they are truly global in that sense. That generation. And if you look at it, the similarities is across the world is quite amazing. You know, what you see happening in LA is happening in Tokyo, is happening in Taiwan. You know, it's the same things. You know, same style, same approach, you know, but they all do have their local content, but the language is slightly different, is very global. So you need that, you know, you must have that local content. I think it's very important. If you're living here and if you're practicing Malaysian artists, you must have a local content. Is how do you globalize that visual? I think that's important.
Thank you very much. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right. May Choi? I don't know. So just say someone. I'm so sorry if I, just misspell some of the names. He or she asks, is it advisable for young artists to post artwork images on social media for the purpose of promoting themselves? Janet, please, if you can answer this.
Okay. I don't know whether Richard is going to agree with me, but as I was saying before, yes, you have to use social media, but don't rely on it exclusively. Don't just turn it into a sales pitch, because people are going to get bored of it. They're not going to engage in it. So you have to tell the story of you as an artist. And I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily go so far as to say, post pictures of what you're having for lunch every day, but alongside with your art, but just make it interesting for people. Make it a feed that people want to come back and see more of. Talk about maybe other artists whose work you like, exhibitions that you go to, any particular events that are important for you, as well as then posting your own work to the social media, and make sure that you get the hashtags right as well. Also credit anybody who deserves that credit. But yes, absolutely, it is now a perfectly acceptable way to promote your work and sell to a point. I post work for the artist whose shows I'm doing. I don't necessarily get people contacting me saying, yes, I love this work, I want to buy it. I use direct messaging. Again, be careful with that. If you're an artist, don't spam collectors with direct messaging. But if you see that there's a collector who you think might be particularly interested in your work, there's no harm in sending them an occasional DM saying, would you like to see more of my work? Here's an example of it. So yes, I would definitely say post on social media, but don't rely on it exclusively.
Thank you, Janet. And there's a question for Richard. Pension asks if there is any advice on how can Malaysian artists stay competitive and relevant in times like this? And do the Malaysian artists have any advantages regionally?
I hope that's not a trick question. To be very blunt, it is a very tough situation for quite a number of Malaysian artists. I think it's because for the last 2-3 decades, it has been rather easy for them because they just sell to the same few collectors. There's a small pool of collectors and they just sell direct to them all the time. So this comfort zone has now been taken away in a way due to the pandemic. So if you think about it, if you look at works from most mid-career artists in the last 20-30 years, they have been rehashing and been making the same things over and over again. So it is a little bit different. The visual is a little bit different from what is actually out there. So there's a little bit of a bit of distortion in terms of the era, the kind of works that's being produced now globally and what is being produced here. So we are still playing catch up in that sense. So it is kind of difficult. I feel quite sorry sometimes for a lot of these artists because, again, I think artists need to understand what is it that they are doing and what is it that they want. If everyone is still painting little village scenes, little girl scene by the beach, batik sarongs, which has been painted for the last 30 years by almost everyone in town. How is it going to go out? How is it possible? You probably end up in an online platform that sells decoration, or you it's so difficult, to explain this sometimes without coming without sounding rude or arrogant or too blunt, but that's the reality, of what's happening here. It's not just here in that sense. There are other countries, who where artists are still making the same things. I mean, I think Janet probably will agree with me. If you see a monk with an umbrella, you know where that painting came from, right? Which 20, 30 years ago was like, wow, every expat must have it. And it's still around. So, what do you do with these? They are trendy at one point, and then as the decades go by, they go a lower rung and a lower rung, and then, at the end of the day, you see them in the frame shops, right? So, but that's the reality. So how do you get yourself out from this situation? And this is where I think we are at.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Oh, I'm not going to get any hate mail after this.
Okay, there is a question from Lighting, and she asked, what is your advice for young artists to sell their first artwork, and what do we need to be aware of? Janet, if it is possible for you to answer this question.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look for the, oh yes, here we go. Well, as I said before, presentation is absolutely key. So I'm always telling artists, and I don't know why it's, I don't know, not obvious, but it's really, really important when you're selling an artwork to describe it properly. So you have to put your name on it, the title of the artwork, the date of the artwork, the precise medium of the artwork. So if it's a work on paper, actually describe what the type of paper is and the dimensions. And the convention in the art world is always to put the height first by the width. So that's very basic. So if you're selling a work of art, you have to include that information. It helps if you can put that, if you're doing it digitally, on the title of the JPEG. Obviously, if you're doing it on social media, include that in the social media post. The next thing is getting the price right. Pricing artwork is a whole nother topic, so I'm not going to talk about that, but don't be overly ambitious. There is, a certain way of pricing artwork by emerging artists. I would say that most works, it depends on the medium, but most works, say on canvas, if you've never sold a work before, don't think, and I'm going to talk in pounds, but maybe talk dollars, it's the same thing. Don't think of pricing your work as more than, say, $1,000. That's quite a high price as an emerging artist, and be consistent in your pricing as well. So and look at other people's works as well, see what they're pricing it at, and always give that information. If you're selling a work, then don't be shy. If you're selling it, or if you're offering it to a gallery, make it very, very clear, because mistakes have happened here as to whether or not you giving the price that you want to get for that artwork, and the gallery then puts their share on top of it, or whether that's the retail price, the asking price that the gallery will get, and discuss your commission with the gallery. It depends, you know, online galleries maybe will take 30 or 40%. If it's a physical gallery with a physical show, then they will take 50%. In some cases, it's even more, it's perhaps 60%. So just be very, very clear about what the pricing structure is. And other than that, no, I mean, take the professional photos, as I was saying earlier on, and put together a PDF, perhaps, because, you know, I wouldn't try and sell just one work, because as Richard was saying, you won't see the context of it. So put together a PDF with, say, 10 or 15 works, if they're from different series, then group them in the series, give them a title, give the artist statement on there, just give the story for the collector in order to really understand your work. And then, yeah, I think that would be my advice. So just get that information out there professionally.
Thank you, Janet. And there's a question for Richard, and Ain Munira asked, what is the best possible way for artists to find out where do they belong in the art scene?
It's you know, you need to understand again, you know, what sort of, as an artist, what sort of work you're doing. You need to observe what galleries are showing what sort of works, you know, and whether you will fit into their program, or, you know, so it's not about it's really about yourself, you know. You must have the confidence, number one, and, you know, again, like what Jenna has said, the approach must be correct. I think even for us, there have been cases where there's no way the work will fit into our program, but we still take it on because, you know, the person, you know, the artist is so convincing, and there's so much fire and passion in and believe in what he or she is doing, you know, and we take that as a challenge to give, you know, the artist a platform, and see where it goes. So you really need to have conviction and be professional about it, and understand what is it that you're making and who you're approaching. I think that's important. It's very, very important. I think this is the first step in the entire timeline that most Malaysian artists fail in. You know, they you know, they come and they show you on the handphone, this is my work, you know, and there's no explain. And then when you ask them, what is the work all about, and they can't explain it, and you know, and there's nothing to back it up, or even to show, you know, why you should spend 10 minutes with this person, because they are basically wasting your time in that sense, right? And they get upset because, you know, you are trying to be polite to say no, you know, and they get upset. So it is so important that, you know, you really understand what is it that you're doing and where do you fit in. You know, we all fit in somewhere, you know, we just have to recognize where.
That's important. Okay, there is a question for both of you. Any thoughts on emerging digital platforms like NFTs? Pure speculation remain with a few select auctions, or are they being taken more seriously by galleries such as yours? So, Janet, maybe you can answer this first.
It's a very good question. And I'm not sure that I can answer it necessarily. But I think, in a sense, NFTs are no different from any other art in the market, in as much as you can have good NFTs and bad NFTs. And if an NFT is good, then yes, it's going to sell. And as we've seen from the auctions, it can sell incredibly well. I am on a platform called Artland, which does give me the opportunity to upload NFTs. Artsy, which is another big platform, doesn't. So I'm trying it out, but I'm not necessarily going to sort of shift the focus of my gallery into NFTs. There's a place in the market for them, most definitely, but for me, not right now. It's a bit too early, really, I think, to see what's happening. But yes, they're here to stay for sure. It's not just a quick flash in the pan. There's definitely room for them in the market.
Thank you, Janet. So Richard, can you also share your thought about this question, because it's for both of you?
Well, I'm on the same page as Janet. I think NFT is here to stay. It has, in a strange way, it has made art truly accessible to everyone. But on the other hand, anyone can be an artist now. Truly, anyone can be an artist. So, so then what happens to art? So at the moment, there's a lot of big numbers being thrown around. I don't think it is, unless it's historical, to me, it's more of an investment vehicle at this point. But I think moving forward, I think it will be the norm, and it's here to stay. Like I said, is the very young generation in that sense, who are very tech savvy and all that, and who are very used to online, and it is their time, it is that generation. So it will develop, and it will move forward, and it'll be, I mean, I think we had a Malaysian artist, who sold an NFT for quite a good sum of money. I mean, for Malaysian standard, I think it was what, 300, almost 400,000 ringgit NFT, and that's great, So again, you need to be ahead of the curve, I guess, if you're in this. Well, I'm a technology dinosaur, so don't ask me, I have no clue. But for artists who are looking at this, why not? If that's truly what you're interested in.
All right, thank you. And there's a question. There are two more questions, and after that, just we can say goodbye. So I don't want to keep you busy here. So just maybe Janet can answer this question. Veronica Chen asked this: may I know what kind of works the gallery hopes to collect or exhibit?
May I know what kind of works gallery? Ones that sell and will make money for the gallery. It's as simple as that. A gallery is a commercial business. So right now, sorry, that was perhaps a bit flippant, but right now, certainly in the US and the UK, the market is very, very figurative. So a lot of galleries are taking on figurative artists or showing figurative artists. From the Middle East, it varies. If again the artwork has to tell a story, there has to be a backstory to the work. So it's not enough just to paint, as Richard was saying, a village scene or something. That there has to be something original about the work. So it's perhaps very difficult to be totally original, but look at doing something that perhaps is unique to you, your own style, and yeah, if the work has to be coherent as well, you have to have a body of work that's your brand. And other than that, yes, I mean, it has to be the right price point. So don't approach a gallery saying that your work, and this happened in the Middle East a lot, especially with the bubble, sort of from 2006 to 2008. There were artists, I'm thinking particularly perhaps of young photographers, who are pricing their works at $15,000. But you can get a Robert Mapplethorpe for $8,000. So why on earth would a gallery, well, why on earth would anybody want to buy a young emerging Arab artist for $15,000 if they can buy a Robert Mapplethorpe? So the gallery's just not going to take you on, because there's no point, there's no reason, because they know that they won't be able to sell the work. So make sure that your work is at the right price point for the gallery. And yeah, other than that, I think sort of common sense really. So but always bear in mind that galleries are not free cash cows. They're not there to dole out money to you as an artist, so they have to make the money themselves too.
Thank you, Janet. And Richard, you may answer this question, which is the last question for this session. How about writing on Malaysian art? Are there sufficient amount of scholarly and Malaysian artists? Do the art community ever about art in Malaysia?
I think there's not enough art writing and art critics, here in Malaysia. And the art community is very fragmented here. So, most of the time they will only write about, artists that they are familiar with or who are part of their group. So you don't have a cross, I mean, you don't have an understanding of the bigger picture. So it is very insular in that sense. I think it needs to open up a little bit more and have more people to come in to write. Sometimes I always say the best art, I don't mean scholarly or academically, but I think sometimes non-art writers can write better about art than art writers, because they don't have a preconceived idea of what art is. And they might, if they're interested in the subject, they might do a deeper research, whereas sometimes someone who's an art writer already has some preconceived ideas and is really just writing from that one perspective. I think at times like this, it needs to be a more opened up, inclusive kind of rationale when one is looking at art writing. And we don't have enough art critics also here, so it is difficult. In the last few decades, it's always been the same few people, so it's almost like a tape recorder that's just rewinding and rewinding and rewinding without realizing that we're now all digital. You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's the case. I think, yeah, we do need, yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Sarna also is agree with you, Richard. Okay. So thank you, Janet and Richard, for sharing your experiences and thoughts with us today. And thanks to School of Arts for this opportunity. And thank you all for joining us today. And if there is more questions, then you can send it to us, and then we are going to share it with Richard and Janet, and then ask them to answer the questions. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a nice and beautiful day ahead. And yeah, that's all. Goodbye. I hope to see you guys again sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been enjoyable. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you. Thank